What's up? Welcome into this Wednesday edition of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I don't know about you fellas, but I was watching TGL last night.
Oh, yeah.
Tiger Woods Golf League. Is that what it's actually called? What's
It's Tiger's Golf League.
Is that?
I just assumed that.
But I was watching. I was like, Tiger, I think, created this just so he could compete again.
Yeah,
because he can't walk
be
now
on the golf course.
But he's out there and he just like doesn't have to walk. He just go hit. He can go putt. It's like 10 feet away, and he can still play. So it was interesting. I like the format. The matches were obviously super lopsided. So they're gonna have to figure that out to some degree. But we were brainstorming before the show here. What could the NFL do in a TGL style manner to add more? And you thought veteran QBs, not veteran QBs,
recently retired or still physically capable quarterbacks being captains of these teams, or having just an outright quarterback skills competition. First and foremost, it gives football fans to watch something football maybe during the off season. And for these retired guys who aren't making $50 million a year, I think a couple checks here and there would be nice.
Keeps them active too.
Yeah, and like skills competition, like what we see at the Pro Bowl.
Yes.
You know those clips you see on Instagram of Peyton Manning versus Phillip Rivers?
Exactly.
Like
hitting the moving target and everything.
That's gold. And I mean, the NFL could capitalize on that. And if it isn't the NFL, there should be an independent league, because there's so many of those now. There's the league where fans call plays. There's a number of ways that you can watch football, but I think this would be another way to get guys involved. And maybe if you want to do a 7-on-7 version,
I was going to say
get amateur guys involved.
TO would definitely be down for it.
That want to make a name for themselves. There's the TOs that could be the captain of the receiver room, and then you could have a bunch of guys who maybe didn't make it to the combine, didn't have an opportunity to play for whatever reason, like essentially like a junior college situation there.
It does blow my mind that they've never gone to a full-blown offseason minor league system with like an expanded NFL roster where you designate, say, 15 guys who can't play during the regular season but are on your minor league roster, let's say, and then have some guys who are your back-end starters for your normal team go play, a 5-game schedule in the offseason, just because everyone and their mother complains about player development, right? And that the fact that these guys can't, especially for offensive line, where we can't develop these back end of the roster guys. We just don't have the time span. We don't have the practice time. We don't have the bandwidth. And there's so much interest. I mean, the NFL has only grown. So I do think there's room for some sort of play from the NFL. And I bet we'll see one here. And just because of how much money there is still on the line, I bet we see one.
I go back to days of NFL Europe when I thought that was a great, neat story. One of my high schools, I believe the Berlin team practiced that. So I used to, like, in the off season, we would be lifting weights. We'd actually go see them and watch them practice out there. Nice. And I would not be surprised, to Mike's point, maybe the UFL does some type of deal with the NFL for, like he said, the back end of the roster, guys that actually don't see the field, because you never know who is going to actually play for you the following year. You don't want to potentially put somebody that's a back-end starter or even a backup. Then your starter gets dinged up, and now this guy has 5 offseason games on his body, and he has to go through a 17-game season. Yeah. So guys that actually have not taken reps during the season, though, I think that would be a nice little niche in regards to that development, because the only way to get better at football is to play football.
And learn more football.
Exactly. Like, you can go through all the practices you want, and those do help. But game speed is a lot different than practice, and that's how you really develop young talent.
And get a different perspective on things. Some of these guys will be coming from situations, quarterback situations that aren't ideal. I'm talking receivers here. And if you give it an opportunity to go work with an Andrew Luck, an Alex Smith, the Phillip Rivers, you name any guy, Matt Ryan, who we have on Pushing the Pile, any number of these tremendously gifted, well-educated in football guys can lend a hand to these youngsters. I think it's a great bridge of the gap there.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for the UFL specifically, why it may not garner the interest that if the NFL did a minor league, is that you're not connected to the players in terms of franchise. So you're a fan of, say, the Green Bay Packers. You're watching these players and you're like, I don't know if they're going to ever be on my team. I don't know. They have no impact on me. But if you connected it where the Packers had their own minor league team, and it's like the Packers summer or whatever league team like the NBA does, you would have a connection then. Like you would be more intent watching those games. You would have a lot of diehard fans more tuned in, because they know if this guy who's balling out, well, he's on my team next fall.
Can't wait to see him in camp.
Exactly. Like, so there's that aspect to it that I think is definitely missing with you.
See how the development went, see if he's
growing. And I think that the cool thing with that TGL is the sheer technology that's awe-inducing, really. The arena that rotates, the green, it's got like 65,000 pistons underneath of it. It can change contour and elevation. And then you get that monstrosity of a screen that you're hitting into.
Sure.
When Tiger Woods walked out there last night and he flicked that the driver cover off his driver and went up there and smashed it. I think he hit about 330. The place erupts. You feel like you're in an arena there. It's not like golf where you're outside, you hear birds chirping, there's no noise. People are getting raucous, and I feel like football crowd would have a really fun time with that as well.
Okay, I have an interesting idea. You saying leveraging technology. What about in the offseason having quarterbacks do VR challenges? I think could be interesting because you get to see at home what they're looking at in VR. And like a lot of quarterbacks use VR to train now. Jaden Daniels, that was like a big part of his preparation at LSU, a big part of the Commanders. They brought that in just for him. They are going head to head with like they're facing the same coverages. They absolutely don't know.
Trying to set a high score.
And seeing who does the best in it.
It's Ready Player One.
Interesting.
I like that. I like that comparison.
In the stacks.
Yeah.
And quarterback position, obviously, you're not risk of injury. There's none. Like you're no defenders, no whatever. If you get, the pass rush comes too soon, it's just you're down. I think that's an interesting wrinkle that
I think it is too.
That the NFL could leverage.
There could be numerous ways to score points for your team. One of them could be setting the high score in the VR portion of the quarterback skills competition. Then you could do this target hitting that we talked about. And then I think there should be 6 or 8 teams with captains. Captains are all quarterbacks that we all know and love from their time in the league. And then you can fill out the roster from there. But I think there's something there. And that was fun.
All right. Hopefully we'll get something in the coming years. I mean, knowing the NFL, if there's a chance to make some cash,
they're going to do it.
We're going to see it.
Hey, Roger, call me.
In our first off the ball segment, all right, we got first off the ball today. We got our deep dives, and then we have your mailbag questions at the end. We'll do a quick first off the ball here because we've touched on this enough. But Cowboys, apparently owner Jerry Jones pitched Jason Witten as the heir apparent head coach. He pitched this to Mike McCarthy. This worked out so well for ESPN when they made Jason Witten their football guy that
as the heir apparent to McCarthy when he retires.
He pitched
like his own Gerard Mayo.
Yeah.
Saw how well that worked out.
Didn't he just watch that movie?
Dude. Jerry just likes the headlines. I think
this is what this sounds like. It sounds fake.
He likes the headlines, man. I don't know how true this is, but this would be an interesting take. Like, first and foremost, you're talking about my heir apparent. Can we do some business? I need to know what my current deal is going to look like. You're talking about heir apparent. Where's my deal? Like,
I'm expired. Figure it out, Jerry.
Good Lord.
Get out of the oil fields for a second and figure it out. Did you see him in Landman?
Bro, me and my wife got hooked to it. So we just started watching episode 1 last night. We just finished 2.
Shout out to Paramount, by the way. We're in the Paramount Studios right now.
Yeah, you can watch that on Paramount Plus. And I would definitely say go watch it. Because it's not a Western, but my wife usually isn't into stuff like that. But she's locked into this show. So they did a really good job on it.
Billy Bob Thornton. I think he writes it.
Really?
I mean, he's like probably in the writer's room. I think a
lot of that's freestyle.
Taylor Sheridan, maybe from Yellowstone. Okay. I think he's in charge of this, right? Can you confirm that? Okay.
Yellowstone.
Taylor Sheridan, who is like everything he touches is gold right now. Sure.
Yeah.
Jerry Jones' scene in that though was like
I haven't got to that part, but I heard it's really good.
That's not acting.
It was legit. I mean, that was incredible. If you haven't seen it, go look it up. It was one of the best.
You texted it to me. I was like,
dude, this was.
I saw it on Twitter, and I was like, Jerry can act. Like he can act.
So, Jerry Jones, talented human being. He was a national champion.
What's your Jerry Jones scouting report?
So guys, multifaceted. The other thing, though, coming out of Dallas, because if one headline wasn't enough, you have Troy Aikman saying there's not a real plan. And this is not a desirable job.
Not a coveted job. He goes, because he was SVP. He had him on Monday Night Football. Yeah. Joe and Troy go to the desk. Svp was like, one of the most coveted jobs. He's like, I'm going to have to stop you there. I'm going to have to disagree with you. And then he walked it backwards. He didn't walk it back, but he smoothed it out for the next 45 seconds. And really the way that he described the situation, the coaching situation in Dallas is something that we can't disagree with.
Correct.
Right? I mean, Troy said it really well.
I mean, there's so much to decipher in this. One, we know Jerry's word is final there. So coming in as a head coach, you kind of already have that in the back of your head. Like, is there going to be tension if I disagree with the owner / GM?
Yep.
Right? You have to put that in its own box.
You've got to chaperone.
Correct. And then 2, like, what is the plan? You had a coach that had 3 consecutive years of 12 wins or more, right? In that span, only Andy Reid had more. Now, again, things did not work out in the playoffs. Some could be, on the coach. Some could be on the players. But at the end of the day, let's not forget, when you had Jason Garrett there before Mike McCarthy, you're going to the playoffs every other year. At least with Mike McCarthy, you're going to the playoffs every year. And the reason why last season happened was because of Jerry Jones. He decided to wait and pay his frontline players, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, which, again, they weren't in training camp together, didn't build up that time and continuity. And then because you waited, the price tag went up. Now we can't bring in other people. And they're going to be in that same conundrum again this year because they waited to pay Micah Parsons. So when you look at the lack of cap room they're going to actually have going forward and what Dak's cap numbers are, they're astronomical. I can see why Troy Aikman says, is this really a desirable job? Because I'm coming in, one, where I'm going to be muffled. I'm not going to be able to truly say how I feel. And even if I do say how I feel, it's going to go on deaf ears.
Yeah.
Right. And then 2, like, as far as the money I can spend, I don't have that many options. We're going to have to get cheap labor, which means we're going to have to build through the draft. What I will say is the Cowboys have been one of the better teams at developing young talent.
Yes.
Right. They do a really good job of doing that. But when you're looking at a division with Jaden Daniels and the Philadelphia Eagles, like, at bare minimum, you're the 3rd team looking up right now. Yeah. So that's why Troy's like, is this really a desirable job? Yes, I know there's this aura with coaching for the star. And if you win there, you literally can set yourself for life. But there's a lot that goes with that.
So like players who get these contracts that are guaranteed in baseball and basketball, if I'm a coach in this current climate of impatience from owners and management, the only way I would sign with the Dallas Cowboys is because of the things that you just said, is if I have a 3-year of guarantee without getting fired.
I would say 6 years.
But you know what I'm saying?
You got to give me a 6-year deal.
Whatever number it is you deem, you
Yeah.
have to say, you cannot fire me. You can't Gerard Mayo me after 1 year. Can't Gerard Mayo me after
your money's guaranteed.
Money's guaranteed, but opportunities,
correct. 100%.
Opportunities go out the window when you get canned, okay?
Perfect example, Byron Leftwich, there was a time where he was one of the hottest coaching candidates. And now he's having a hard time just being an NFL coach again.
It sucks.
Yeah,
you get all the way to the core of the rooms. You work your way through the outer layers into the inner layers, and then immediately you're bumped to the curb, and you lose all that character capital, that credibility. It sucks, and I feel bad for these guys. But I would be like, look, you're going to have to pay me either way, so you may as well just keep me because your team is going to suck because of the situation you got us into.
All right. To put some numbers to Dak and the cap situation, his cap hits the next 4 years: $89 million, $68 million, $62 million, and $72 million.
And people talking about he could get traded. Yeah, all right.
And if you want to do some funny money, push some of that money out into the future, well, you're pushing it past his age 35 season. That's always risky with how we've seen some.
Was that the Bobby Bonilla deal?
That age. Especially given Dak's injury history at this point. He's had a few major injuries, unfortunately. So I think that's why Troy Aikman's it's going to be tough. It's just objectively when you're paying this guy more than pretty much any other quarterbacks getting paid in the NFL in terms of just pure cap hits, because you wanted to keep his hits so low early on because you thought you had this window, that you're just going to have to build a perfect roster around him. And more often than not, that's difficult to sustain.
Shout out to Joe and Troy for being honest, or at least Troy.
I love that.
At least Troy. Getting on that desk and just saying,
keep it real out there.
Hey, SVP, man. I hate to stop you, but I disagree with you. And
Is
there's nobody
really
who knows
desirable?
It better than me.
Quick mailbag question so we don't have to harp on the Cowboys all show long. This one comes from Caleb Queen. He said, you have to put your life savings on the Cowboys' next head coach. Who is it? First off, I'm not putting any life savings.
That's right, because you never know what Jerry Jones is going to do.
Thank you for your service, Caleb Queen. We got a service member there in the profile pic, unless we're being absolutely trolled.
I'm looking at
I would say Deion Sanders.
Yes, SPC in the Army.
Deion Sanders.
Deion Sanders, because Jerry Jones clearly wants one thing, and that's to sell tickets.
And he would definitely do that with that.
You know what I'm saying? You'll put asses in seats.
That for sure.
There are people that revere this guy like a deity, and rightfully so. Deion Sanders, primetime. If he becomes a head coach at Dallas, if they find a way to make some moves, imagine if Shador and but you just talked about the funny.
I would say that the money that Dak, everybody keeps bringing up this scenario with Deion Sanders potentially going there and trading Dak to the Tennessee Titans. The dead cap money and money just makes that not realistic at all.
Well, I would say just the Deion move, I could totally see happening, and there's a why there that works. I just think it would be awesome for the NFL, and the Cowboys would be even more hated and even more loved if that's at all possible.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say mine because it's part of my deep dive.
Okay. Save it then. I'll go with Bill Belichick. I've been saying it since midseason when it looked like McCarthy was out. I just think Jerry wants his brand to ever be entangled with the best head coach of all time, right? Just like, I think you'll pay for it. I know
it's not that bad. I think it's maybe 10 mil to break that.
I think it's 1 mil before June 1 and 10 mil after that.
And I think Belichick would have serious interest. I know the college thing's like a new fun challenge for him, but this guy wants the freaking record, man.
Yeah.
He's talk about competitive spirit. That guy.
I think he's going to do UNC for a year.
I think just because he's committed so much to UNC, 400-page document in regards to what the day-to-day is going to look like. It sounds from everything that I've seen in interviews that he's done that he's committed to staying at North Carolina. But again, coaching for the star could maybe change his mindset. But to Troy Aikman's point of view, isn't that desirable?
Here's why I don't think it'll be Bill Belichick. Number one, because he committed to the UNC thing. Mm-hmm. And people have said, well, he walked away from the Jets thing. And, that's a long time. It's water under the bridge, baby.
Is it? Not for Jet fans, is it?
So here's the why. I saw him yesterday in Boca Raton, Florida.
Ooh.
And
are we breaking news?
He looked like he was focused on recruiting some of the country's best athletes down here in South Florida.
Cut off hoodie on?
He was in the Bill fit.
Was he?
At the gym. He looked like, if you close your eyes and imagine Bill at like a chest press machine, that's what he was in. And I didn't bother him.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm not going to bother him just so I could talk about this on the pod. But I would imagine he's recruiting. He's recruiting hard. He wants to make a statement at UNC. He wants to turn that into a powerhouse very quickly. The same Jim Harbaugh effect we saw for the Chargers, getting them into the playoffs. He wants to have that impact at UNC, and that is going to be part of his resume for moving forward. People say he couldn't win without Tom. People said, he's the game has passed him by in terms of scouting. We saw the Mac Jones pick. Mm-hmm. This is a guy who wants to show that he can be the GM at UNC for a year, and that'll be his resume, and he'll skip to the NFL after that. I just don't know where. Maybe if Zach Taylor and the Bengals don't make the playoffs again, Zach Taylor out, Bill Belichick in, that would be fun. Joe Burrow and Bill Belichick, come on.
I'll just say, you saw Bill Belichick out in the wild. Didn't say anything. Didn't even ask him to come on the pod. No commitment.
Jeez.
You didn't want to get out there.
I was headed to tennis. I didn't want to be late.
Joking.
All
right. We're going to take a quick break after going to get to our deep dives for this week.
Sail GP is coming to Auckland, New Zealand. The City of Sails will be expecting a performance from the Black Foils and their driver, Peter Burley.
All right, Leger, let's start with your deep dive since you teased it in the A block there.
You friggin' tease.
Yeah, I wanted to go down the rankings, and I want you guys to be interactive. Rankings of current head coaching positions that are open right now. I'll give you my rankings first, and then I'll tell you who I think is a good fit. So first, I want to give you the rankings. I think the Bears, when you look at the jobs that are available, because New England's no longer available, I think the Bears is the number one job available right now. You're gonna say no?
Or you just keep go through it, but I got reasons. But
speak on
Bears. Then I'm gonna say 2 for the Jaguars, 3 the Cowboys, 4 the Jets, 5 the Raiders, and 6 the Saints. You guys tell me your ranking, and then I'll go into why I picked the Bears first overall.
Okay. It is tough, but I do still think organizational support matters. And nothing I've seen from the Bears to date makes me think they're going to change their stripes in terms of how they structure contracts, how they, the fact they play in freaking one of the smallest stadium in the NFL. Like, there's so many issues to the Bears right now that
mighty.
They got the talent. From a talent perspective, like, if you're ranking rosters, I'm not going to disagree with this. I think that's a talent cap, but I do still think where you're at matters. So I would still put. And then I'm not like putting the Jags in that situation.
I thought I was about to say, are you gonna put the Jags up there?
I would put the Cowboys above them, but I just don't think any of these jobs. I thought it was Pats was the clear one.
Yeah, for sure.
And obviously that one's filled. Now after that, I think Cowboys will still give you the tools you want if you are a great head coach to succeed. I don't know if that's for sure with the Bears, Jags, Jets. Raiders at this point either, and then the Saints they're just in such a shitty cap situation.
That's why I got them last.
So I'd probably just bump the Cowboys above the Bears, and I think the Jags just slightly above the Bears. And I'd put the Jets actually above the Bears too, just because the talent there is also young.
Yeah, they got.
It's all
they don't have the trigger guy though.
It's all rookie deals.
Let me tell you
they
what.
Don't have the.
Let me tell you what, Mike. I'm going to start with 6, and it is the Saints.
6 is
because of the
and
minus 78 million cap space.
Yeah.
Okay, and we've talked about their terrible contract management there.
For sure.
5, I think I agree with you here on the Raiders because there's been so much in and out the door there. But the Tom Brady ownership piece makes things really interesting. I'm going to keep them at 5, though, because they have to prove it to me first. I agree with the Jets being number 4. Because of the fact that there has been so much uncertainty there, the quarterback question marks, and that media, the fan base, the media. I work in New York every weekend. I understand how insane these people can be, and rightfully so. It's been shitty since Rex Ryan left.
For sure.
And then this is where it gets interesting. I'm going to go Jags at 3 because Trent Baalke is still employed.
Dude,
Plain and simple, huh?
Right.
If Trent Baalke wasn't employed, I would imagine Ben Johnson will be signed already, like a retro
legally wouldn't be
pre-signed.
Yeah.
What is it?
What a handshake,
verbal commitment. It would be. I'll be there. I'll talk to you in a month and a half after we go to New Orleans.
See you in a month.
So I've got the Jaguars there. I mean, you got the quarterback, you've got the owner that doesn't meddle. I think Ben Johnson would really appreciate that. He would have a direct line of communication with him, get things as he wants. Number 2 would be the Dallas Cowboys. And I just think that regardless of what the roster situation is, regardless of the cap space, it's the Dallas Cowboys. And if I was a head coach and a prospective head coach, I would want badly to be the Dallas head coach. I just know it comes along with that. Number 1, obviously, the Chicago Bears. And I think that, to Mike's point about them not changing their stripes, I've listened to a few cut-ups of George McCaskey giving firing and hiring presentations. Have you seen this where it's like a minute and a half long of George McCaskey saying the same thing every time? Very respectful to the fans. We understand your frustration. 6 times since Lovie Smith got fired.
Correct.
Lovie Smith, Mark Trestman, John Fox, Matt Nagy, Matt Eberflus, and now we're on to the next one. But here's the thing. I think Virginia McCaskey turned 103 2 weeks ago.
Wow, that's a blessing.
It's a blessing. She's an incredible woman and has been around the Bears her entire life. I think that at this point now, George understands that his mother, being 103, isn't going to have many more of these hiring and firing cycles. And he's going to just eventually put his hands up and say, Jesus, take the wheel, as it were, as it pertains to his staff. So I think that Ryan Poles, Ian Yates-Cunningham, and if Ian Yates-Cunningham leaves, then he's not going to be part of it. But Ryan Poles will have the green light to do exactly what he wants. I think that with this new head coach hiring, whoever it is, if it's the guy right here on the screen, which I think would actually be cool. I made a couple memes this week about Mike McCarthy eating Chicago hot dogs. He'd be right at home. He'd be sponsored by Illuminati's tonight, by the way. This is a guy with a ton of experience. This is a guy with a Super Bowl. This is a guy who works well with quarterbacks. This is a guy that even at the end of the year with injuries across the board to his team, they still showed up and competed. The star of his team, Micah Parsons, sung his praises and talked about wanting to go out there and compete for the coach. I think it could be a home run. And he's old school, and he's a yinzer. I think Mike Ditka was also a yinzer. So there's a special place in Chicago fans' hearts about these Pittsburgh natives that come in. They're just tough SOBs. And I love Mike McCarthy. He's got the perfect build for that Arctic climate in the wintertime.
He'll stay warm.
Yeah.
He's got a street named after him in Green Bay. They can't do that. He can't.
I mean, dude. Mike, we talked about this the other day. I guess all of us are simpatico thinking that he's the perfect fit for the Chicago Bears. When you just look at it, you name some of his accolades, right? Has a pedigree of really developing young quarterbacks. We saw with Aaron Rodgers, and he had to make a difficult decision when he was in Green Bay because Brett Favre decided to come out of retirement, but he decided, we're going to ride with Aaron Rodgers, continue to, develop him and make him the quarterback in the future. And look, that worked out. In Green Bay, they freaking won a Super Bowl there.
Who does Caleb model his game after?
Aaron Rodgers. Let's go back to when he decided to take over the play calling duties in Dallas. Remember, Kellen Moore was there. They had a top 5 offense.
Yep.
Well, when Mike McCarthy took over, they had the number 1 offense in football. And for most of that season, Dak Prescott was the front runner for MVP. And he had his best statistical year all year long. So this is why I think it's baffling to a lot of us that Jerry Jones didn't work this out with Mike McCarthy. But if you're Chicago, he's the perfect candidate for you, right? And you have $82 million in cap space, and you have a top 10 pick. So why not get a guy that has championship experience who can develop young quarterbacks, and quarterbacks have had their best years under his tutelage? Just makes more sense for the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams to have Mike McCarthy as head coach.
To put more context as to why I said the Bears is not the number 1 job, and what I think gets vastly underreported in an aspect of how Chicago does business that I think really puts them behind the 8 ball, really hampers them in terms of competing in the NFL and really competing for Super Bowls. They match money to year every single big deal they sign, which means if it's a 4-year, $100 million deal, a guy's cap hit will be $25 million every single year of that deal.
Feels elementary.
You got to move that money around.
They do not, and it's because I think the McCaskey family does not have the cash flows that other
owners have.
So they have to have the money go in that year. They don't give out big signing bonuses, and they don't put funny years on the back end to push money down the line. And when you're doing that, matching money to year every single time, you are. Yes, maybe you make up for it on the back end of deals where you don't have these big backloaded contracts, but a lot of teams give themselves outs at the end of deals.
Correct, yeah.
And so they're eating a lot of cap hits early on in these deals where you look at most big contracts, like the Jordan Love deal, his cap hits the next couple of years are going to be like 30 million.
They're low, yeah.
Million. And then he has a void year at the back end where it's another 30 million, but the cap's going to go up by 30 million by then.
Correct.
And so if you're only doing that every single contract you sign, you're basically always kind of front loading deals instead of back loading. And that works if the cap stays stable year on year on year. But if the cap's going up, and it's gone up every year except for COVID,
sure.
Then if the cap's going up, you are basically hurting yourself in the short run to maybe save in the long run, to maybe have a cheaper deal at the end of it. But also a lot of times guys don't live up to it by the end of their contracts. And so
I hope George and the guys are listening.
But that's the biggest thing that doesn't really get talked about. Because again, not a lot of people dig deep into the cap. But if you're doing that with every single big contract, they did with DJ Moore, they did with Jalen Johnson, they did with Montez Sweat, you are hurting yourself in the short run and not making yourself as competitive in the short run, unfortunately. So
yeah. So let's go to my number 2 team. And I had the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I paired them with Ben Johnson. I just think Trevor Lawrence has gone through multiple coaches, right? Urban Meyer, Doug Peterson. They still haven't been able to get that talent that everybody's expecting, right? Trevor Lawrence essentially got paid because of what people think he will be, right? Potential is a dangerous word in the NFL because a lot of times dudes get paid off of potential. My thing is, when is he going to realize that potential? And if there's any guy out there I think that could maybe squeeze that talent out of him, it's Ben Johnson. I mean, he literally resurrected Jared Goff's career. Now, Goff was a good quarterback when he was with the Rams, but McVay thought they could get a little bit better there, and it ultimately worked. They won a Super Bowl, but it's also worked for the Detroit Lions as well, right? When you see what Jared Goff has done, he's constantly been a top 5 MVP candidate.
And all the players they got from that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Trevor Lawrence, Ben Johnson makes a lot of sense, and they have the 5th overall pick. But to Kyle's point, what is going to happen with the GM? Trent Baalke. And I think that's something that needs to be discussed. And it seems like Shad Khan, we talked about this interview, him and Baalke being on there at the same time. And the reporter asked, so what if the head coach comes in and says, maybe we need to change some things up personnel-wise? He was like, well, if he actually has the information and it makes a lot of sense, something that we're gonna actually visit and look at. And the dude next to you is saying, oh, so I'm out the door if the coach doesn't want me here?
2 bucks, and he's
like,
just,
yeah. So it's just like, my thing, sometimes I feel like owners should just rip the whole Band-Aid off, right? Start anew. It'll be interesting because I do believe Ben Johnson ultimately ends up with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I agree, though, with those two. It's where you get to the Cowboys here that it gets a little.
Yeah, you like it. It gets a little crazy, right?
I saw that.
Let's get to the next one. Cowboys. We talked about Dion earlier being potentially a head coach. There was a report, Jason Witten, that Jerry Jones potentially maybe wanted him to be a head
pretend
coach.
I didn't hear that.
I'm going to go out of way left field here. And I think this one actually makes the most sense. People have talked about Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, maybe the message getting stale. And you know this, Kyle, when it's been the same voice for 18 years, is it resonating with the team still, right? And I think Mike Tomlin's a hell of a coach. I think he's been a detriment to himself because he's overachieved with the current rosters that he's had over these last couple of years. When you have inept quarterback play and you still win 9 and 10 games, that proves you're a hell of a coach.
Yeah.
My thing is, Jerry Jones makes these flashy moves. Trade for Mike Tomlin. Sometimes going to a new place, get a new voice. He's a guy that's going to get the best out of those players. He's a no-nonsense guy. He's real relatable. And is there any guy that can motivate his players more than Mike Tomlin? I think it just makes too much sense for Jerry to trade for Mike Tomlin. Now, again, I don't know if Pittsburgh and the Rooney family would be willing to do this, but I think it would make a lot of sense.
Would he wear all white on the sideline, or would he go?
You know, he'd be crisp on the sideline.
All white with the blue star.
Remember when he used to have the fresh fade when he had the high top?
Mike Tomlin,
you know the shades are going to be on even indoor.
It's gonna be an even more Hall of Fame look as a Dallas head coach than the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach.
So Sean Payton got traded, obviously from New Orleans to Denver, but that was more of. He wasn't obviously the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. He was out of the NFL already, but they still had his rights. That was a first and a second. The Saints sent back a third. So that was compensation for that. Herm Edwards was the last active head coach to actually get traded. That was in 2006. That was the Jets trading him to the Chiefs. That was for a 4th round pick. Where do you think, because I mean, Steelers fans would legitimately be happy with them just like cutting Tomlin outright. But I do think, again, they could get trade return. They'd be silly, in my opinion, to just let him walk because he would be the hottest candidate on the open market once they did.
That's what I'm saying. So it just depends on.
So I wonder what compensation would be.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like maybe a second or third.
Yeah, I think a second's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what it is.
Make it happen, Jerry.
But Jonathan
Who
Jones,
would Pittsburgh hire after that is the
Jonathan
question.
Jones said they don't do
Mike
this.
McCarthy.
Matt Nagy.
Honestly, McCarthy there would be. He's from Pittsburgh. That would be.
Matt Nagy back with Justin
quarterback situation. If I'm him, I'm taking Chicago for sure.
True.
Nagy with Fields.
Yeah, let's go to the number 4 team. I have the Jets as the number 4 team. I think Aaron Glenn just makes too much sense.
Yep, I said
got a first round pick for the Jets, 2-time Pro Bowler there. When you walk in the building, he's got a big picture there. I think it would mean something to him. I think that's what me speaking as a Jet, we need somebody that it means something to. I think Rex Ryan was the last guy where it was that type of feeling, right? And I love Todd Bowles. Robert Saleh is my guy. I love him as well. I just think having a guy that wore the green and white and it means something to would make too much sense. I go back to the Hard Knocks. I think it was 2 years ago when the Lions were on there. And when Dan Campbell had Aaron Glenn speak in front of the entire team in front office, I've never seen a meeting room more locked in for a coach speaking, which means he demands that respect in that room. Players respect him. People in the front office
you can
respect
hear a pin
him.
drop in there.
Correct. Everybody was tuned in and locked in. I think that's something the Jets need. They do have the 7th overall pick. Question is Aaron Rodgers going to be part of the team or not? I would lean towards him probably most likely not being part of the future there, him and Devontae. But I think Aaron Glenn makes the most sense.
But you got a full covered on D, right?
Yeah.
If you're just like objectively looking at these teams and like, where can I have the most success on the defense side of the ball, my side of the ball?
It's the Jets without a doubt.
It's insane. So, yeah. 100% agree.
All right, let's go to the next job. And this one's interesting, right? The Las Vegas Raiders. There was rumors, because Tom Brady's a minority owner, that maybe potentially he wanted Vrabel to come there, or he's trying to get Ben Johnson. And again, if you're Ben Johnson, you're probably the top guy on the totem pole. And you look at the Raiders, you're like, who's my quarterback? Yes, we have a ton of cap space. But our owner's been kind of funny with the money, right? So it's just like you have 112 million in cap space. You have the 6th overall pick. So you could essentially flip this roster over quickly, but then you're also looking at the division. 3 of those teams in the division, besides us, made the playoffs this last year. So I actually have Liam Cohen going there from the Bucks, right? This is a guy that has worked his way up. When he was offensive coordinator at Kentucky, Will Levis had his best year there. When he went to the Rams, he learned under Sean McVay. Now we see what Baker Mayfield is doing this year with the Tampa Bay Bucks. It'll be interesting to see, do they try to get aggressive in the draft and try to potentially move up from the number 6 spot? I just don't see Tennessee or Cleveland taking calls because they need quarterbacks in the worst way, unless they're just not in love with any other 2 guys. So essentially going to have a bridge quarterback. Now, is that Sam Darnold? Is that Daniel Jones? Like, who is that? Is it Russell Wilson? I think Liam Cohen can steer the ship until they find their quarterback of the future. And I think he'll be a guy that they'll probably lock into a 6-year deal, and he'll probably demand that just so I know I have the comfortability of being here for at least 3 or 4 years to build this the right way.
I'll say this about Liam Cohen, and we've talked about it a lot this year. I love the way that he was able to change the flavor of that offense at the drop of a hat, with injuries to Godwin, with Mike Evans out of the roster or lineup on numerous occasions this year, getting the running backs involved in the passing game. Granted, Bucky Irving was fantastic. They hit a home run with their draft pick on the at center. And obviously Tristan Wirfs is a man-eater out there at tackle, but even the running game changed as a result of what worked and what wasn't working at an optimal level. And they were pointing that out on the broadcast this past game against the Commanders. And it stuck out to me because oftentimes when I think about these offensive coaches, I don't think about the run game. And sometimes these run games, they don't change. They just are beating their head against the wall the entire year. He's a guy that changed with the times, and I think as long as you get a better quarterback than what they have in Vegas, that team will make big-time jumps.
One thing I will say, because we talked about this earlier, a lot of people don't know this, but we're nerds and we watch a lot of tape. This Raiders offensive line is actually pretty good.
Yeah,
when you talk about it, I think the thing that Liam Cohen really did it was kind of like the Tampa Bay Bucks O-line, very young, aggressive at the line of scrimmage. I think he can be very inventive in how he has different blocking schemes to support that run game with the Raiders. So I think there's a little bit of comparisons when you talk about the 2 O-lines, Bucks and the Raiders as well.
Yeah, I think the more I think about the Raiders job, more I'm like, it might not be that bad, especially since they're going to have to give you a long leash, right? They're going to have to give you like 6-year deal
minimum.
But you basically get to make this roster in your own image. You have enough cap space to do it. You have a high enough draft pick. Yeah, you don't have a quarterback, but you have a good O-line. And so, and that's a young O-line. So it's cupboards bare. It's the barest of cupboards of all these teams.
You got Brock.
But you have the space to make it work, and you have an O-line.
Brock Bowers.
Oh, yeah.
So there's
going to be okay.
Yeah.
Just give him the ball.
It's like a high school football team. Just throw it to Brock.
You're starting like an expansion franchise, basically.
Pretty much.
Is there income tax in Nevada?
No income tax.
I was like, he's going to get all that bread, too.
We always lead with that with Florida.
we should lead
with the Vegas guys.
100%. And the last and final job, Saints, and I think Mike's talked about this till we've been blue in the face. Worst cap situation, minus $78 million in cap space already. And then when you look at some of the contracts they're under, they're just bad. We've been saying this for years. It's time for them to stop kicking the can down the road and just take the hit this year, be bad, and get from up under these contracts. I think Brian Flores makes a lot of sense just because when you go back to when he was in Miami, it was kind of similar to how this roster for the Saints is in regards to the players and them actually being in certain cap situations. Brian Flores was trying to get it from up under some of those bad contracts. And he had these guys competitive, for 2 years in a row. So I think this is a scenario he could go there, build it up from square one. My thing is, if I'm a head coach coming in, I'm talking to the owner, like, we got to get it from up under these contracts. So you're not really giving me a chance to win games. Like, I know you guys think we can go 8-9 or 9-8, but that doesn't get you to the playoffs anymore. We need to stop kicking the can down the road, get from up under some of these contracts. And I know a lot of these frontline guys are mainstays in New Orleans, but it's time to move on and build this thing the right way.
You know who we never talk about, who's definitely not going to be quarterbacking somewhere? Derek Carr is going to be a quarterback somewhere else. They're going to trade Derek Carr, or they're going to cut him. He is not going to be a New Orleans Saint. I would be so surprised if he's a New Orleans Saint. So I bet he's like, whether it's the Giants, not the Raiders.
Go back to the Raiders?
He's not going to go back to the Raiders. So like, He could be Browns. He might be a guy who we really haven't talked about much.
Starter that went back to his original team.
That's a good question.
Cam Newton.
When did he go? He went back.
Remember, he went to New England, then he went back to Carolina.
I do not.
Oh yeah, and he couldn't throw it if I can stop. Well, he had a shoulder.
Yeah, well, they used him mainly as like a wildcat guy.
He was such a friggin'.
He was. I mean, that's the only one that comes to mind recently.
Yeah. I'm trying to think.
Maybe add us in the chat. Let us know.
Yeah.
All right. And you had Brian Flores going there.
Yeah. That's what I was saying, because like they're going to be cap strapped. They're going to have a lot of talent. And Brian Flores usually elevates his talent. I mean, even looking at Minnesota's team this year, a lot of people won't know the guys' names. Like Patrick Jones had a career year there. Van Ginkel was a good player, but he became an all-pro this year.
DPOY level.
Exactly. Blake Cashman was another guy. So he's been able to do more with less at different stops. I trust him in this.
Do we think we're far enough away from him, suing the NFL, that NFL owners would be willing to sign? Because
if I was an owner, I'd still be like, "Hey, I think he's a great coach, but just don't forget."
That's why, is that going to limit his options? Because if it's limiting his options, maybe the Saints are like.
That's what I'm saying. I think that makes the most sense.
And he bullied Tua Tagovailoa.
He really did.
Like he bullied him.
He definitely did.
They kicked Richie.
Miami's got
since then.
They kicked Richie out the league.
Something about Miami just lends itself to that.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle, what's your deep dive for God?
My deep dive is this ain't your daddy's NFL anymore. Offenses win championships.
Defense wins championships.
It's been
a while for that.
I think we got about 6 years offense winning championships.
Offenses win championships, man.
Yeah, that's true.
And if you're if you're on Twitter bitching about calls against the defense, or if you're saying we might as well play 7-on-7, you can't even touch these quarterbacks anymore. Where can you hit them? Keep raising your hand. The quarterbacks are dancing out of bounds. That's holding.
Get your butt down. You don't want to get hit.
Hey, all I'm saying is, man, wake up. Like all those accounts you follow on social media that tell you to wake up, look around society, and look at what's really happening, man. Offenses win championships. If you've got a problem with that, you're probably watching the wrong sport, because who do we pay the most? Quarterbacks. You know who gets paid the second most? The guys who are chasing the quarterbacks. It's all about the excitement around the offensive side of the ball. And when people started to panic on the Detroit Lions, and I was guilty of it a little bit, I said, look, Aiden Hutchinson is big.
Yeah,
that's huge, bigger than big. The number of injuries on the Detroit Lions defense and their sustained success have proven to me that offense wins championships. Because if you can't stop Ben Johnson, Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, good luck. Yes, the Kansas City Chiefs have won the last 2 Super Bowls with a rare combination of exquisite defense and masterful quarterback play and offensive line play. But at the end of the day, if you take out the defense from a great team, they should still be able to be in these things offensively. And take a look around the league right now. The Buffalo Bills give up 40 points at the drop of a hat. Yeah. The Detroit Lions could have the scoreboard ran up on them. Mm-hmm. But unless you're scoring every 2 minutes and going for 2, you're in trouble against these teams.
I mean, case in point,
the Jets.
I know you guys saw Buffalo's game this last week, right?
Yeah.
I've never seen this in my life, where a ref comes up to a guy on the sideline and apologizes for a missed call. What type of NFL is this?
That's the MJ treatment.
Like, what are we doing here?
The MJ.
I was like holding his head too. I swear.
Have you ever been in battle, in war, and maybe a defensive lineman's hands go up to your face and doesn't get called? Does the ref go,
no?
Okay. Defensive lineman, we get held on every play.
They go, watch your hand, 72.
I'm sorry that we missed that whole. That never happens. No. To your point, rules are made to benefit the offense. And that's why when everything he rattled off, I was raising my hand, because I'm that guy on Twitter complaining. And to your point.
You and many people.
Yeah. And to your point, I guess I just have to get with the times, right?
Open your eyes.
Get with the times. Case in point, they specifically made a rule so defensive backs cannot go low on offensive tackles when they pull outside. But yet a 250, 260-pound tight end on a split zone can come back across the formation and take a defensive end's legs out. They're letting you know what it is. Like, the rules are literally to benefit the offense, right? I think even Bill Belichick talked about it. Case in point, the Monday night game, Matt Stafford throws a backhanded pass.
That was a pass.
Oh, Stop it, man. That didn't even see where they were going.
That was the Mahomes pass.
And worse should have been intentional ground.
It was intentional passing.
Yeah, intentional into the ground is what that was. That should have been a sack fumble touchdown like they called it on the field.
Mike,
this dude's head was this way, the receiver was this way, and he did this. Like,
no look
come
cut.
on, what are we doing here?
Remember Jason Williams, NBA?
That's not, yeah. That would have been a turnover in the NBA.
I don't understand why every single quarterback in the league, when he's about to get sacked, doesn't just do that.
Because they don't have the presence of mind.
Well, I know,
but
but it's also because it's kind of fucked up. It shouldn't be a pass.
This is how we get paid.
Yeah.
Quarterback sacks. You just took a sack away. You just took money out of my kid's mouth by doing that.
Did you hear Gruden talking about how he thinks that pressures is an overrated stat?
Yeah, I saw that.
It's funny because we always bring up that scenario like pressures versus actual sacks, right? And they say the measuring of where a true guy is going to be effective on the quarterback is based off pressures, but there's so many nuances when it comes to that because it depends on the system. If it's all out blitz and he's not blocked, you're going to get a pressure no matter what, right? My thing is, I think there's something to be said finishing and getting a sack because when you have guys like Matt Stafford who are savvy that can throw it into the ground, you got guys like Josh Allen who, as big as a tight end, will literally knock you off. Like, there's something to be said for actually finishing and collecting a sack because these quarterbacks nowadays, some of them are so agile in the pocket. Joe Burrow, best pocket presence in the football.
And strong as shit.
Yeah. So like
Anthony Richardson.
Like, so I get him saying that because that's a metric that so many teams use. Well, his pressure rate was only this, but he collected 10 sacks. What are we talking about here? Like, you know how hard it is to get a sack in the NFL? Yeah. And if you consistently do that, I don't care what your pressure rate is.
Mike?
I will say though, so all things being equal, you want the guy who gets sacks. But if you're not pressuring the quarterback consistently, but you can finish, you want like your Brandon Grahams of the world who they don't rack up sacks, but he racks up
They
pressures.
let the quarterback know that they're there.
Whereas Vic Beasley had like 17 sacks that 1 year.
But that was 1 year. That's what I'm saying. If you have somebody consistently
sacks,
doing
Fair. All right. I do agree though. Offense, like the Jets, the Patriots of the last couple of years know very well that you're going to have a dominant defense.
You're not winning if you ain't got offense.
Yeah, well, but if you have a number 1 offense in the NFL, number 2 offense in the NFL, number 3 offense, you would have a bottom 5 defense. The Bengals maybe found.
I'm about to say the Bengals found the hard way.
They were a top 3 offense this year. They were top 5. They weren't like dominant offense. Yeah. But that was like, that was also like the biggest anomaly.
Yeah.
Well, they were without T. Higgins for a while.
Of any team.
Yeah, but Joe Burrow still
were
passing touchdowns and passing yards.
Hey, look, I'm trying to defend.
I don't think they finished top 3 though in terms
defense,
of
come on defense.
They actually finished 6th in the NFL in points per game. So
really
weren't even top 5 offense.
I think those last couple games really hurt them too.
Whereas the top 5 teams are Detroit, Buffalo, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, Washington.
Playoff teams.
Then Philly, Green Bay, Minnesota, Denver. 9 on your top 10.
High?
Green Bay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because Malik Willis played so much.
Hey, give me some. Is there quarterback controversy in Green Bay?
All right, my deep dive was going to be top 10 mock draft, but we're going to save that one. That's evergreen. We're going to be talking mock drafts all throughout. No, it's fine. We got a bunch of draft questions in the mailbag, so we'll get to that one probably next week at this point. We're going to take a quick break after that. Going to get to your mailbag questions.
Sorry, Mike.
All right, first question on X comes from Jeremy Muse. He says, how much does scheme matter? Example, Quinn brings in his guys like Armstrong, Wagner, and Fowler, and they've all been huge. On the flip side, Pearson Houston looks great rookie year. New OC takes over, switches to outside zone. He looks like he's never seen football before. Yeah, scheme matters a lot.
This guy's awesome, by the way. Jeremy?
Yeah.
Every tweet or message I get from this guy is like the most football guy type shit.
I love that.
Okay.
Those are our listeners. Yeah, scheme matters a lot. I mean, fit matters a lot too. You see it every year, especially on the defense side of the ball. Guys being asked to do things that they are comfortable doing. So yeah, it matters a ton. And I think running backs too. Some guys are better at certain schemes than others. Yeah, I don't know how much more to say. Like it matters.
This is why I always say coaching matters too, right?
Yes.
And this is why I loved Rex Ryan because he always said, "Don't tell me what a player can't do. Tell me what he can do." And he's going to put you in a position to succeed based on what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We always had a rule in football, right? Alignment. Have your alignment based off your ability. Right. And so Rex will never put you out of alignment based off what he knows you could or couldn't do. So like people kill me. Yes, scheme matters, but you also got to figure out how to use the pieces that are on your offense and defense. Right. And this is why Liam Cohen had such a special year, because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had been known for years for not running the football.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think what was last year, maybe where Rashad Wright was the first time I had a 1,000-yard back in like 10 years or something like that. And then Bucky Irvin doubles it down. And he did it not even starting like the first 7 or 8 games of the season. So he was able to adjust when Chris Godwin got hurt, right? They went to 2-back sets. They got inventive with the offense. That's why scheme matters and coaching matters, right? But it's not just about scheme. To his point, right? Pierce looked like he was going to be the future back for Houston his rookie year. And they changed from more of a G scheme to a zone scheme. Now, again, good coaches are able to sprinkle in what a player does well. Mm-hmm. So when Pierce is in the game, you don't want to just lock him into only doing G scheme because the defense can pick up on that. But you got to mix it in because that's what he does well. So like say he gets 7 carries a game, 3 need to be zone scheme, the rest need to be some type of G scheme, some type of deuce block scheme, duo type scheme. That way that really highlights what he does well.
And I like that you brought up Tampa Bay because they literally even did that this year, and they highlighted on the broadcast that they were, a pretty varied run scheme and they went heavy gap scheme by the end of the season because Bucky was so good at it. So,
bring the guard, bring the tackle, seal the backside, and just follow the hogs. And the one guy that I always think about is Leonard Floyd. We drafted Leonard Floyd in Chicago. He was a do-it-all guy. He could cover your tight end to the sideline. He could chase down a running back. So what happened was, he is one of these guys that can do 90% of things on a football field, but they were asking him at the beginning to do the 10% of things that he couldn't do. They lined him up at edge rusher, and he would just get, stuff. He didn't have the timing of his speed to power yet. He didn't have his bag of tricks yet. And one thing that I appreciate about that staff that had him, that defensive staff, is after a while, they moved him over the center and did an off-the-ball spinner look, and let him rush over the center. And he had a ton of success there. It used to drive us crazy. But I remember thinking, hey, that was really smart. This guy who is clearly physically gifted, clearly a great football player, you had him doing so you were fitting a square peg in a round hole.
Correct.
You put him inside and he has the fluidity. So that's where coaching and scheme matters.
I thought they should have never let him get out the building.
Never. And Roquan and Eddie Jackson.
The list goes on.
All right, this one comes from True Trade. He asks, is Geno the best option for the Seahawks going forward?
The only option. I mean, where they're at in the draft, I mean, they went 10-7. Let's not forget, most years 10-7 gets you into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. It was just unfortunate this year because of, I think it was strength of schedule or tiebreakers that they didn't get in. That shows you the NFC was pretty strong this year. But, I mean, where are they going to go? We saw what happened when they put Sam Howell in the game. They're not going to be in a position to take a quarterback of the future. And who's to say that they're even high on Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders anyway? Mm-hmm. So, honestly, I think Geno's cap number is like $44 million. I would not be surprised if they restructure and give him one more year.
I would add a year. Yeah,
because it just makes too much sense. And then let's not forget, I was going to say this would be a second year in the offense, but they got rid of the offensive coordinator, which is kind of tough. But Geno does need to not turn the ball over as much as he did, which he usually takes care of the ball. So it was kind of weird this year that I felt like he was pressing sometimes.
I think Geno's definitely the guy. And you get a new offensive coordinator in the building next year. You're going to want a veteran quarterback to be able to retain and then regurgitate that information to the young guys at the receiver position, the offensive line. They're all going to be learning together. The last thing you want is a day one guy to be paired with a day one guy. I think that can be dangerous.
Selfishly, I want Josh McCown to be paired with Aaron Glenn. But that's a name. If I'm Mike McDaniel,
Mike McDonald.
McDonald, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm throwing whatever he wants checkbook-wise at Josh McCown to come to Seattle.
Best teammate ever.
Yeah. We feel like we have the defense. We have players on the offense. Now, it'll be interesting to see what they do at receiver because Tyler Lockett is getting up there. And the DK and Geno thing seems weird. Right now, Jackson Smith and Jigba is clearly the number one guy now. DK and Geno not being on the same page caused some of those interceptions.
We need to get DK that book. that
Something needs to happen
AJ Brown was
because,
reading.
Like, you cannot continue to go to, because Geno throws with so much anticipation. If you're supposed to be somewhere, that's where the ball is going to be. So it's been like that for the last couple of years. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with that going forward.
Yeah, Geno had bottom 5 O-line in the NFL pass protecting from.
That's what I need to get more
banged up. I mean, you had like a dozen guys
Yeah.
that played, I believe, for them this year along the offensive line. When you have a dozen guys seeing snaps in your
That's
O-line,
insane. You got no chance.
you got no chance, unfortunately. So yeah, Geno's easily the best option, and I think we both agree. I would put more years on him. I think give yourself that flexibility from cap perspective, and then also like if you're drafting a guy, you always want to draft the guy before you need to draft the guy.
Correct.
So it still doesn't preclude you from drafting the guy. All right, next question comes from Dinko. Where would you rank Shador and Ward in the 2024 QB class?
So last year's quarterback.
So yeah.
So I'm going back and forth with this. I think I had Shador, and this is, Cam, and this was based off the college film, not from what we've seen these rookies do this year.
Yeah.
I think you have to put that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I had Cam either right in front of Drake or right behind him.
Okay, so
like
where'd you have?
Like four. So I had mine was Jaden, then Caleb, then I was then Michael Penix Jr.
Okay.
Then I had Drake, then I think Cam.
Okay.
And then I think I had Shador right maybe after him. I think based off the tape.
Yeah.
Because the McCarthy thing, I wasn't a big fan of. Didn't see much of it in college. Now he does with velocity and a lot of tight window throws. And then Bo Nix, again, I was worried about his arm strength. A lot of dinking and dunking at Oregon. So I think I had Shador in front of him. So I think 5 and 6 or 4 and 5 is what I had him.
I would have Cam Ward as 5 in last year's class. Again, I went to bat for last year's class. I said I had 4 guys who I'd take number 1 overall in last year's class. Those were, I had the order was Caleb, Drake, Bo, Jaden. I thought they were all awesome prospects. And then I had...
You took Bo 1?
Yeah, I would have been. I thought he was that good. Not like, I'm saying like in a vacuum, if there's basically, go back to the 2022 class where Kenny Pickett was QB1.
Yeah.
I would have taken Bo number 1 in that class, right? So I think he was that good. So I would have put Ward 5 then. I think those 4, Ward, I just thought all those 4 were like much more polished coming out. And then
in front of Penix.
I'd have him in front of Penix, have him in front of McCarthy. I would then have Shador behind those 2, though, behind Penix and McCarthy. I think so. That would be, I guess, 6, 7. So last year's class, it would have been quarterback 8 in last year's class. And it would be even, I like Spencer a good amount, not a ton. I think Shador would be slightly ahead of Spencer Rattler for me, but it's like, that's more the caliber of prospect I see him. Unfortunately, it's just like he has not a great arm, which you see when Shador, when he throws down the field in last year's class, dead last in terms of arm strength. If you're just ranking him,
and all the Bo's?
No, did you see Bo had the farthest throw in the farthest completion in the NFL this year?
I'm talking about that 57-yarder?
Yeah, the one.
Or the one to Mims you're talking about.
I saw Josh Allen throw it on the sideline 60 yards down the right sideline in Detroit. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, that one was. But Bo had the drop back.
Yes.
What was it? Week?
I was like, oh my god.
What week was it that Bo had that? Week 17 maybe, or week 18?
Was it versus the Bengals?
Versus the Bengals. It was the Mims play.
Yeah, it was. Then he hit him again later on in the fourth quarter.
The play action where he goes from he was at his own 40.
Well, he had one week 18 that was 57 air yards versus the Chiefs.
Yeah,
just Cortland Sutton on a go ball.
And I saw Shador trying to put it. I've never seen him get to 60 yards in the air.
That's not an issue for Cam Ward.
And when he taps out, Cam Ward, Cam Ward has every single game he's putting one over 60.
He's like Raul Mondesi. I don't know if you guys remember Raul Mondesi. He was a right fielder when we were growing up. And for those non-baseball fans, that's where you put the guy with the strongest arm.
Yeah.
Raul Mondesi hit bombs and he just had a rocket launcher. And Cam Ward looks like he's just casually 75.
I used to do this thread every year where I would tweet out the longest throw of every top college quarterback's collegiate career, just as like a proxy for arm strength. And Ward had one against Cal this past fall that was 66 or 67, depending on how you want to do the Pythagorean theorem. That was just a freaking bomb, man. Yeah. I mean, he puts them out there deep. And most guys, if you're touching mid 60s, that's tier 1 arm strength.
Correct.
So that's high end arm strength for the NFL. A lot of guys scrape by. I didn't think Jaden had a great arm. I thought his collegiate career, he got to about 60, I think was his longest. And you saw him on the 65 on the Hail Mary. It was about tapping out for him. But that's good enough NFL arm strength, right? You're seeing it with him. But if the guys that struggle to get over 60, Jalen Hurts is in that category. Brock Purdy's in that category. Tua's sure in that category. I think he never hit one longer than like 53 in college. You're going to be limited. And that's how I see Shedeur at the next level, unfortunately. Next up, top 5 positional groups in the draft. I don't know how deep you are in this year's draft, Lachey, but I'll start.
D-line's one.
D-line.
It's not even close.
It's edge and DT are probably like 1 and 2.
Correct.
I think edge is probably 1. DT is 2.
Is Abdul Carter the
That's
first
where
one?
the talent is.
Yeah. I think he can be generational.
He's
I
a
think
carbon
he's
copy of
That's the thing. So people are going to do that comparison because
He's
they both wore number 11.
Bro, I'm telling you, he gives me the same
Micah?
nightmares that Micah does.
Yeah, no, 100%. The versatility for sure. I think Micah's a little bit more thick than him.
Thick.
Though. Yeah.
Which gives me even more nightmares about this.
Carter's got better.
Bigger.
Carter's got better
because he's just like,
That's what I'm going to say. Yeah.
This guy, Micah Parsons, is a bigger target than Abdul Carter. And I feel like Abdul Carter has like an NFL level understanding of leverage and getting guys to a spot. And like you said, the first 10 rushes may be setups. His first 3 are setups.
Oh, yeah. After the second or third one, he's ready to go.
Yeah.
So I go edge, DT, running back is very deep.
For sure.
Tight end is going to be a very good class.
Pretty good class.
You might have a couple first rounders in that. And then after that, I'd probably either say those are like, after that, there's not really a great class year on year. I think those are the only 4 I'm like, these are probably better classes than you get normally. I don't think there's any other position where I'd put that on, but maybe cornerback, depending on how you want to see Travis Hunter. If you see Travis Hunter cornerback, then probably cornerback.
Would sway to that.
Anybody checked in on that?
I got like 4 guys going in the first. I think Amos is the first round quarterback.
Okay,
a lot of people have him top of the second. I think he'll sneak in the back of the first.
Gotta check in on Travis.
But I would agree with Mike. That's why I said D-line right away, and that's essentially 2 position groups: D tackle, D end. Running back is a monster class this year, and like it really is. Like there's some guys that'll probably go in the 3rd round, kind of like Bucky Irvin, that will be starters in the NFL. Like it's that deep.
So I know Genty and I know Scattaboo. Who are the other guys that I should have my eye on?
Ooh,
Kid from North Carolina.
Yes, Amarion Hampton.
Yep.
You have
love that name.
Yeah.
Quinshon Judkins, Trayvon Henderson, the 2.
Have they declared yet?
No, but I mean, they have until, if you're in the championship, you have until the 24th.
It said Singleton's coming back.
Yeah, Nick Singleton, unfortunately, coming back. I thought he would have gone high.
I thought he was going to go
because he's going to run fast and he's big. And it's just like, that's combination.
You got RJ Harvey from UCF.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Trying to think who else. There's a bunch.
There's a lot, dude. The kid from Virginia Tech's a good player.
Oh,
I forgot how to say his name. But there's the running back is deep this year, kind of like deep.
And speaking of, this next one comes from Udit Rana Sari. He says, "Why aren't people higher on Cam Scatabo?"
He's another running back.
Racist.
I think when you look at him,
I was like, yeah, he's so pale.
He's a great football player, right?
Yes.
I think athletically he's limited in some areas. But if you're looking for a guy in like the 4th round that's going to come in and be a board daddy on special teams.
He's a Kansas City Chief already.
He does look like a Chief.
Andy Reid loves the
guy that is just going to bring that grit and determination.
Mm-hmm.
That's the type of guy you want. And those are guys, some teams will maybe even take a little bit higher than he probably would.
Culture guys.
Culture guys, the perfect way to explain it.
Yeah, I think his like pure one-step burst and then long speed is just like, it's not what people are looking for in today's NFL, right? Like everyone wants a little more juice at that position than he's going to give you. But he could be like a Brian Robinson at the next level. Like he could be a guy that really grinds out yardage. So
he won the 3rd.
He won the 3rd.
That's what I'm saying. So like guys like him, Audric Estime, they go like 4th, 4th, 5th.
But they're guys.
Yeah. And he will be in the league.
Yeah.
What did Prisco say? You can find running backs anywhere.
He's a guy. That's where you draft him, 3rd, 4th, 5th round.
Oh my gosh.
And that leads us to our final one here from Joe Tusio. He says, "How good should a running back be to warrant a top 10 pick?" So to me, it's not as much about how good should they be. I mean, obviously, if you're Ashton Genty, if you're Adrian Peterson, like I'm willing to take you in the top 10.
Is Genty an AP guy?
But I'm not passing on like top 10 other position players to draft them, right? Like
positional value is a real thing.
You just said Ashton Genty and Adrian Peterson in the same sentence. Is that even a thing?
No, I mean,
but
like, Adrian Peterson
it's a different NFL. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Right. So like,
but Genty can catch way better than Peterson.
Yeah.
And so
But
it's
I mean,
more
but I think
for this
that's still a
He
question
can
mark
catch
for me.
handoffs.
Like when you look at him, his ability to catch the ball in the backfield, I don't think it's on par with Bijan or Jameer.
No, he's not that.
And to me, that's what warrants a top 10, top 15 pick.
And he's got a real
Correct.
small target rate.
Correct. So like Dallas does make sense at 12, but if I'm not mistaken, that's where Gibbs went, right? So I'm like,
Yes.
Are you putting him in the Gibbs category? Because as people love to say, these airbacks, right, guys? Like airbacks, catch the ball. Like I don't think he's done it consistently enough. Now I'm not saying Genty can't do it, but I'm one of those guys, again, the exception to the rule. I have had to see it on film. And I saw it from Jahmyr Gibbs. And actually, I had Gibbs rated higher than Bijan Robinson. People looked at me crazy. I don't think a lot of people look at me crazy now. Now again, Bijan Robinson's a hell of a back.
Jahmyr Gibbs is so damn good.
Gibbs' acceleration is second to none.
But that's what like everyone wants, right? They want a Devon A-Chain. They want a Jahmyr Gibbs. Those are the guys that are terrifying. Saquon Barkley, that can hit home runs to that degree. I mean, I think Genty's going to run fast, though.
Yeah.
I think he's going to put up some numbers in the 40.
He'll go first, but I think you start talking about him around 17, 18, 19, 20 pick.
Okay.
I don't think it'll be a conversation where it's like Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan potentially is a top 12 guy, even though Dallas makes a ton of sense.
I do think in this class specifically, I'd be willing to right at the back end of the top 10. I think he's that good, and I don't think you're passing on any good players. Now, last year, I wouldn't have taken him until like the mid-20s in last year's class. Last year's class was just like, I was so high in it. You had Jared Versco 19, right? Yeah. And that wasn't even like, no one saw that as like a slide, and pretty much all the guys that got drafted above him. Well, all the guys that got drafted above him have balled out too. It's not like anyone drafted above him was really.
Latu, I thought was a good pick, and I think he'll be a good player.
So last year's class was just different. I wouldn't have taken a guy even close to that. But this year's class, I just fail to see a lot of top end talent. Like you're passing on guys to draft Genty, who is going to be nasty at the next level. Like you see it. You can feel confident to draft someone who's like a big time project, say like a Michael Williams out of Georgia. That guy's just such a boomer.
Okay,
sort of.
Thank you. I was having this conversation with Ryan Williams, and I love Michael, but I see Trayvon Walker all over again. Yeah. Now again, Trayvon Walker's actually had a really good career, back-to-back 10-sack seasons, which you can't scoff about. People will say, well, they made the wrong decision because Hutchinson was going to be Defensive Player of the Year, but I'm like, I mean, this dude still had 10 sacks in back-to-back years.
But just say he's like, Genty is, let's just say he's Bijan Robinson at the next level. So that's who he ends up becoming.
That's a lot, though. That's saying a lot.
Are you taking Trayvon Walker right now or Bijan Robinson on your football team?
Probably Bijan.
So that's like if you're taking.
I don't think he's Bijan though.
Okay, that's just if you think he is. So they're asking in a.
Yeah, if you think he's Bijan, you take him over Michael. And that's the thing. So like this edge class. There's a lot of guys, like there's Abdul Carter, and then I say there's the rest, but there's a lot of like high level guys when you talk about Prince from Ole Miss, you talk about Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, Nick's, how do you say it, Scranton? Scorton.
Yeah.
Like, so this is a deep class, but when you talk about foundational, I don't know if any of those guys fit in that.
I 100% agree.
But the conversation we have, positional value is a real thing. Mm-hmm. So guys are going to err on, I'd rather take an edge guy than a running back here, just because I know that position, to Kyle's point, and I've said this for years, the league is run by passers and pass rushers.
Yeah, and protectors.
And guys that stop them from getting. So like they're gonna err on taking a lineman or a defensive lineman before they take a running back.
I do think the pendulum swung though from running backs don't matter to, oh man, everyone's playing too high, we have to run the ball.
Exactly.
It gets swung very wild.
Got to get him out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. All right, that's our mailbag. That's our show for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for asking all your questions. We'll be back tomorrow previewing divisional round.
Ooh.
Best round of games, Mike, every year.
Semis.
Until then, keep pushing.
The quarters.